Okay, welcome back, and what a delight to finally connect with us today. Liz Peek, she's a columnist for FoxNews.com and also with Fiscal Times, and we have a lot to talk to her about with all the debates and the candidates going on. Hi, Liz. Good to see you. Finally, we connect.
Yeah. Nice to see you, too.
All right. Thank you. Happy New Year to you. Well, did you get a chance to see the debate Thursday?
I did. I also saw the debate Saturday, one of about 12 people, I think.
Oh, you were the one. You're the 12th one. Okay, well, nice to see.
Sunday, whatever it was. Yeah.
Well, let's start with the Republicans. Pretty interesting. It got a little contentious at times. There seems to be more and more separation between Trump and Cruz, and even Cruz and Rubio. What'd you think?
Well, I think there's clearly two battles going on, one between Cruz and Trump, as you mentioned, both of whom are positioning themselves as the most obstreperous, sort of out-of-the-box candidates. Cruz is really presenting himself as the hard right, most consistent conservative, trying to appeal to evangelicals in Iowa, which, of course, is the site of the first caucuses very soon. And then there's a battle on the other with the other 4 or 5 people to kind of see who's going to be the voice of the moderate Republican. And that is Jeb Bush, of course, and Rubio and Christie mainly. And I think those guys are going to be duking it out in New Hampshire pretty vigorously for the next several weeks.
Do you think the duking it out between Cruz and Trump is healthy or destructive for either one of them?
Well, I think it's been absolutely fascinating, which I guess you're not supposed to look at this as sort of some great chess game, but it's almost irresistible. And it's interesting to me because for months now, the leading narrative from the Cruz campaign and from everybody who knows Ted Cruz or about him is that he is the smartest guy in the room. Great debater, Harvard Law, all of this. And that, and I and others have written about the sort of masterful way he has managed his relationship with Donald Trump. I mean, as you remember, he was really the last of the GOP candidates to criticize Trump when he made some fairly controversial statements about not allowing Muslims into the country. Cruz kind of held his fire and clearly kind of positioned himself so that if Trump ever blew up, Cruz was going to be the person there collecting up all of the Trump supporters because he never really stepped on his toes. More recently, what's been interesting is that Trump really did a clever thing. As all of a sudden Cruz was surging in Iowa, threatening Donald Trump's highly vaunted #1 position, Trump brought up this birther issue. And what's interesting about that is a lot of us who follow these things knew very well that Ted Cruz had been born in Canada, but this apparently was quite a surprise to a lot of people in Iowa who had not heard this. But what was clever was that Trump brought it up in a way that he was doing Ted Cruz a favor. He didn't want him to get too far out in the lead or, heaven knows, get the nomination and then have this issue raised. Far better to look at it now, when he could deal with it. But it really took the air out of the Ted Cruz surge. Now there is some, substantive conversation about why was Ted Cruz's mother's name on a list of voter electorals in Canada at a time when she was married to Cruz's father. It looks like maybe she was a Canadian citizen at the time, but they didn't have dual citizenship. So it's all gotten kind of muddy and complex. And that suits Donald Trump perfectly. So here's a guy who is not a politician, who has made all kinds of outrageous remarks in the course of his campaign. But this was pretty genius. And so I think it's a very interesting jousting contest, I must say.
Well, as Donald Trump says, it puts a question over Cruz's head. So how does he get this behind him, Liz? It seems to me he's going to have some kind of legal opinion, something somewhere that's going to have to put this behind him. Where does he go to settle it?
Well, interestingly, that's exactly what Donald Trump is asking for or suggesting, that, really, Ted, you need to solve this. Go get a legal opinion. Well, as we all know, that could take months. And during that time, he's going to be running as sort of an injured warrior. I think it's a very tricky thing. What he has to do is first of all, he can't dismiss it as he has been doing, sort of snarkily, because now people are actually digging into this stuff. And, you know, any candidate who does not think that every document pertaining to their history is available to those who are looking for it is nuts. I mean, everything like this is going to be discovered at some point. So he needs to go make a statement and say, here's what happened. Here's why my mother, by the way, on his birth certificate, his mother, Eleanor Carrig, put down the name of her first husband, not Cruz's father. So that's kind of a strange thing, too. He needs to have someone explain, he needs to explain all of these inconsistency in his personal story, get it all out there so they're not people like me sort of digging around and saying, wait, why is this name different than that name, et cetera, and come clean about this. And by the way, at the end of the day, I think it's probably fine. I don't think there probably is an issue with his eligibility. But as long as people are talking about it, he's losing, and he needs to confront it.
He didn't do himself any favors with the New York comment. I think, I mean, Trump pretty much shoved it down his throat, didn't he?
Yes, and it's a stupid thing anyway. Look, I think at the end of the day, I have a piece up today about Ted Cruz, calling him a phony, which is pretty harsh for me. Most people think I'm much too understated. But I think he is phony. I think this whole idea that he's anti-establishment, for heaven's sakes, he went to Princeton. He's married to a Goldman Sachs managing director, went to Harvard Law School. He's about as outsider as David Rockefeller. And so I think, look, was part of me probably responding to his insulting of New York values and by reference New Yorkers? Yeah, maybe. But it was a stupid thing to say. He has positioned himself to win the presidency on a campaign that makes a big deal about how unpopular he is, how unlikable he is. Is that a winning idea? I don't think so. I don't think that's something that most people warm up to.
All right. The exchange between Cruz and Rubio, pretty heated. And did it hurt either one of them?
Well, again, I would argue that Rubio hurt Cruz a little bit because, in fact, some of the fact-checking organizations have determined that, yes, Cruz has changed his position on a number of things related to immigration, on H-1B visas, on birthright citizenship, et cetera. As far as Cruz hurting Rubio, Rubio's involvement with the Gang of Eight, for which he has been criticized by those on the right, has been known for years. And it's been a talking point for Ted Cruz for years on the attack against Rubio. What Rubio has not handled this well, what he should have done, again, is come out very clearly when he started his campaign and saying, I want you all to know, those of you who are really concerned about my past embrace of a path to citizenship, remember that that path to citizenship was supposed to take 10 or 15 years. This was not amnesty. No one should call it amnesty. It was a very rigorous kind of set of hurdles that people had to jump. But in any way, he should really kind of confront it more frontally, more honestly, and say, yes, that's what I did then. I thought the country was ready for immigration reform. By the way, the polling showed that that was true. Now I understand, and I think, frankly, Obama has made it much, much tougher. Now I understand the country is not ready for that kind of measure. So here are the things I would do instead. And by the way, I think I have an idea of what he should do, which is that he should, in fact, endorse ending birthright citizenship. I've written a lot about this, and this is a policy only we and Canada now still embrace. It's a stupid policy. It undermines our rule of law in many, many ways that we don't have time to talk about, but it's a mistake. That would make the hard right happy, and it's, again, it's a reasonable thing, which, by the way, many years ago was endorsed by Harry Reid. So the Democrats would have a little hard time going after this, I think. And I have, a series of other things. But if Rubio came up with a reasonable set of nostrums or prescriptions for our immigration problem, the other thing that I think is very important, he should come out and say the 11 million people here illegally should never be allowed to become citizens. They will get a green card or a resident legal alien status, but they can never be citizens. Again, that would sort of mollify people on the right, and in conjunction with ending birthright citizenship, I think would go a long way towards solving our immigration problem.
Boy, that's fascinating.
So,
Fascinating. Well, let's run you.
yeah.
All right, let me take a break. When we come back, we'll go over to the other, since you were one of 12 that saw the one on over the weekend, we'll talk to you about the Democratic debate in just a few moments. Liz Peek is with us, and FoxNews.com, columnist there, and you might want to check out some of her writings. We'll be right back.
I'm Paulina Leiser, producer of Focus Today. Thank you for watching this video, and make sure to check our other videos at theDove.us.
Okay, we're back, and what a delight to have back with us Liz Peek. She's a columnist for FoxNews.com, and she's also with Fiscal Times, and we're talking about the various debate, and I think she's about ready to announce her candidacy as the Make Sense candidate. What's that?
You know, people kind of just thought about, solutions. What's discouraging to me is nobody really wants to come up with solutions. People just want to keep yelling at each other from their respective corners, and I find that sort of a sad, sad place where we are today.
It's frustrating as all get out because you really don't know who the person really is. All right, let's go over to the Democratic one. It was pretty predictable, a little boring, but for the first time, Hillary and Bernie kind of jabbed one another. You think it did any good for either one of them?
I don't know that it really made much difference. I sort of see this as sort of a make-believe contest, and I know that Bernie Sanders supporters would find that really offensive, but when Hillary Clinton says she always thought this was going to be a long, drawn, tough battle, I really don't think that's true. I think they expected to cruise into the nomination, and I think she will. In Iowa, the thing is narrowed, but she's still going to win Iowa. He will win New Hampshire because of it being a neighboring state, and he's, is obviously very visible there. Once you hit South Carolina and there's a big black population voting and other states of similar demographics, I don't think Bernie Sanders is going to have much success. So I think Hillary's the nominee. I think she's a terrible nominee, and I think Democrats are aware of that. I know a lot of Democrats. They're not happy that she's their nominee, but boy, what a thin bench they had. And, look, the DNC takes some responsibility here. The way they've orchestrated these debates is completely idiotic. Martin O'Malley, he had several strikes against him because he's from a state where they had huge race riots, of course, and other issues. But, he should be getting a little more traction than he has. But really, it had to come through the debates, and he hasn't had a chance to do that.
Well, if he goes into Iowa and he doesn't pull, 15%, then his caucus support goes to, well, they're saying now probably over to Bernie. So we'll have to wait and see. But I would have to assume after Iowa and New Hampshire, he's probably done.
I think that's exactly right. But, it is remarkable, right? I mean, the issue about Hillary Clinton and her candidacy is maybe she'll be indicted by the FBI. I mean, what does that tell us about the front runner in the Democratic, party? That she's unbelievably corrupt is without question. Even people who are supporting her here in New York really don't question that. I think what's most interesting right now, I've written in the past several months about James Comey, who's the head of the FBI, who I think is a terrific guy, totally apolitical, really stand-up fellow. And I ventured, 4 or 5 months ago that she might actually be indicted on the emails. What's interesting to me is news that the FBI had expanded their investigation into the Clinton Foundation, because to my way of thinking, they didn't really have to do that. I think the foundation is a cesspool of corruption and pay to play. With Secretary Clinton, when she was Secretary of State, definitely appearing to give favorable help to companies that then turned around, like UBS, and paid Bill Clinton a lot of money, gave money to the foundation. But the public isn't quite as on top of that or as aware of that. And I think the public would have demanded the investigation into emails. I don't really think they demanded that the FBI go into the foundation mess. So I'm a little intrigued to know who is pushing that, whether it's coming from the White House or Justice. I don't know. But it's sort of an interesting element in this campaign year for sure.
The scenario I keep bumping into, that there may be three cases now. You certainly have the emails and the servers, private servers in the bathroom and all that nonsense. You have the foundation investigation. Now you have an investigation on emails that potentially show that there was an intent to deceive.
Right.
So you have three investigations. The scenario that seems to be popping up, and I don't know, maybe it's make-believe, but that the FBI will have overwhelming evidence that the DOJ can't ignore, therefore an indictment would come down. The president will take the posture that we can't have a first lady go to jail, so he'll pardon her, and that leaves the door open for Biden to get back in. Is that a possibility?
And it's been talked about for months. I think it maybe is a possibility. I thought that Joe Biden's withdrawal from that race, that nice little interview that was put together with him and his wife, was sort of left that door open and was a very sympathetic interview. Joe Biden, of course, was riding a huge wave of sympathy because of the death of his very attractive son to brain cancer. And I think that there's a real sense of nostalgia amongst Democrats who would very much have liked to see him enter the race. And they also, by the way, Democrats are looking at the Republican field and saying, oh my gosh, it's such a mess. Surely we need somebody who can beat a Donald Trump or a Ted Cruz. It shouldn't be that hard, but it's hard, as you say, if your candidate is in jail. So, that is a scenario for sure. I also heard, some people think that Joe Biden's not the guy, but so the Democrats are hastily looking around for somebody else who could fit into that slot. Jerry Brown, believe it or not, has surfaced as a possible last-minute replacement. I don't know. I think it's just an amazing scenario. And yet, by the way, going back to your three possibilities on the investigation, I think also there's destruction of government property. Destroying or attempting to destroy the 30,000 emails that she considered personal. What we know is that some of those did deal with Libya, did deal with Sid Blumenthal, a longtime friend and advisor who was giving her advice about what was going on in Libya. That's pretty borderline, and a lot of people think that also is a line of possible inquiry here.
Well, in order for this thing to be credible, they have to come up with this fairly soon. If they wait too late, it'll be just seen as politics. So we'll have to see how that plays out. Liz, I wanted to get your comment before we run out of time. The Republican House and the Republican Senate passed the omnibus bill, which basically gave the president everything he wants through the end of his term. It was just unbelievable. It's that kind of disgust that the American people are upset about. Then they turn around and they put forth two bills to defund Obamacare and defund Planned Parenthood as some kind of this is what we really want to do. Well, there's no way the president's going to sign that. I don't think this got past the American people. I think the American people picked up on this, and they are just sick about it.
Well, I think you're right. I think that the bill was a mess. I personally and many other people have written about this. I think these huge spending bills are created just for the purpose that they satisfy, which is you can plug anything into them and no one really knows what's in those bills. I think that the leadership of the House and the Senate that is to say, the party elders, the Republican Party elders, if you want to classify them as such, are desperate to win the White House. And I think as much as conservatives would have liked to see a fight to the death about the omnibus spending bill, the recognition is that in the shutting down of government a couple of years ago, Republicans completely destroyed their brand. Now, I have had any number of arguments with conservatives on this subject because they say, well, how could that be when we came back and won so handily in 2014? Obviously, this was something good for the party. Absolutely not true. The polling on the Republican Party itself never has been worse than it was in the aftermath of that government shutdown. What happened then was that this chronically unable White House, the Obama White House, had about 6 major scandals having to do with Obamacare and Bowie Bergdahl release. And literally, I mean, there were literally 6 of them, the IRS scandal and on, that completely torched Obama's standing. If you recall, going into 2014, no one on the Democrat side would even campaign with Obama. He was so toxic. And the Republicans made hay of that. They really took advantage of all the things that had gone wrong in the Obama White House. It had nothing to do with confidence having been placed in them by virtue of a government shutdown. So I think that McConnell and Ryan are right to have done what they did. But having said that, there will be a coming forth moment if indeed the Republicans take the White House. We have to get our hands on the waste and corruption in government. And I think everybody knows that. It's very hard to do, but we have to do it. It needs leadership. It's not going to come from a Democrat. It has to come from Republicans. And if they don't do it with a Republican Congress and White House, they will never elect another president.
If Trump is the nominee, can he get along with this established group in the House and the Senate?
I think he would be a president like Lyndon Johnson. And by that, I mean he would haul people from Congress into the White House, which Obama has never done, and basically beat up on them, cajole them, flatter them, whatever, to get them to do what he wants. The answer is, if his presidency depends on getting things done, he has to do that. And I think he has a much better shot at doing that, by the way, than President Obama. I will also say that Hillary Clinton would be maybe pretty effective in that, too. When she was in the Senate, both Republicans and Democrats had good things to say about her. They actually thought that she was pretty effective working across the aisle. I don't know about you, but I hope we do get a president who will at least work to bring Congress around. This whole business of using executive action, angering the populace, Obama can't let a week go by that he doesn't do something that makes people mad, because he has no support in Congress whatsoever, even from his own party.
Liz, you're a delight. Thank you. Let's stay in touch. I know you're very busy, but I want to say to our viewers and listeners, check out Liz's columns at foxnews.com. And we look forward to having you back many times as this thing goes down the road. Have a great day, my friend. Good to see you.
Thank you very much for having me. You too.
Okay. All right. We'll see you next time on Focus Today.